August 15th, 1971. President steps to the microphone and quietly detonates the foundation of global economy. Richard Nixon announced America would end the convertibility of dollars into gold. In one sentence, money became belief. The world's reserve currency was suddenly backed by nothing at all. Faith was now the only collateral. Over the next 5 years, gold more than tripled. The metal that measured all value was screaming a warning. Flip the lens, and the truth is darker. The American dollar had lost more than 2/3 of its value. What followed was 2 decades of brutal inflation. Prices climbed by double digits, year after relentless year. Today, we stare down that same barrel again. So we must ask the dangerous question, was abandoning the gold standard a mistake? To some, it was the beginning of the end of American supremacy. To others, it was liberation. A currency finally freed from a heavy, outdated chain. After the 2008 crash, voices called for gold's return. Now, in fresh uncertainty, the idea rises again. To judge the future, we must dig into the past, the full messy history of gold and the dollar. What exactly was the gold standard? And why, after centuries, did the world walk away? The story truly begins in 1944, in the final shadows of World War II. In a quiet New Hampshire resort called Bretton, the architects of a new financial world gathered. Their system was elegant. Every currency would convert to dollars, and the dollar would convert to gold. In one stroke, the world's money became gold-backed. No nation needed to hoard the metal itself. But there was a catch. Americans themselves could never trade their dollars for gold. Only foreign nations could. It worked. Global trade exploded to levels no one had dreamed possible. But cracks were already forming. Currencies are shock absorbers. Left free, they rise and fall as economies boom and bust. When a nation struggles, its currency falls, making exports cheaper and softening the blow. A built-in cure. But fix that currency in place and the cure vanishes. Economies can spiral out of control fast. America was uniquely trapped. Its dollar was pegged to gold and to a dozen other currencies once. When America prospered, its dollar should have soared. Instead, it stayed pinned, and rivals quietly cashed in. Nations stockpiled cheap American dollars, buying the reserve currency for less than it was truly worth. That was a small price for crowning the dollar as the world's king. The benefits dwarfed the cost, but what happens when the king grows weak? By the late 1960s, that nightmare arrived. The Vietnam War drained the treasury. Massive borrowing left the American economy quietly bleeding. Normally, the dollar would simply fall, cushioning the pain, but the peg slammed that door shut. The world saw the truth. The dollar was overvalued, and nobody wanted to hold an overpriced currency, so they took the other option. They traded their bloated dollars for cold physical gold. France led the charge, demanding gold by the shipload. The vaults of America began to empty. 2 disasters loomed. First, America's grip on the world's money was slipping away. The second was far worse. America simply did not have enough gold to honor the promise. There are 2 kinds of gold standard. The first stores enough metal to redeem every single dollar. That's the full reserve standard. Pure, total, and only ever workable in the simplest economies. Modern systems used a trick, fractional reserve, where only a sliver of the gold actually exists. The bet was psychological. People could redeem gold, so they never would. It was too heavy to bother. But fractional gold carries the same poison as fractional banking. The fatal flaw is fear. If people suspect the gold isn't there, they rush to grab it all at once, guaranteeing it isn't. France alone couldn't break the dam, but if confidence ever cracked, the collapse would be instant. So Nixon struck first. He suspended convertibility before the run could begin. A preemptive amputation. The temporary fix became permanent. The gold standard was dead. Now the real question begins. Was it the right call? France saw the bluff. American dollar sat overvalued, propped up by a peg that no longer matched reality. So they made their move. Instead of trading currency, France began cashing American paper in for cold physical gold. It triggered 2 crises at once. America's grip on the world's money loosened, finger by finger, and the deeper terror surfaced. America simply did not own enough gold to honor every claim placed against it. There are 2 kinds of gold standard. The first keeps enough metal locked away to redeem every last dollar in existence. This is the full reserve standard. Pure on paper, but it has only ever survived in the simplest of economies. Modern systems chose a gamble instead. The fractional reserve standard backs only a sliver of the dollars in circulation. The bet was psychological. People could redeem their dollars for gold, so they never bothered. Gold is heavy and hard to hide, but that confidence was a glass floor. The moment people fear the gold will run out, they all rush in at once. And in the rush, the fear becomes real. The stampede to withdraw guarantees there is not enough gold to go around. France alone could not topple the tower. Not yet. But the question itself was a loaded weapon. If the world ever doubted the dollar's gold, the entire system could collapse in days. So Nixon struck first. What began as a temporary suspension became permanent. The gold standard was not paused. It was buried. So was it a mistake? Before we judge, understand what gold could actually do when wielded right. Gold's greatest gift was simplicity. It made trade between nations almost frictionless. Gold is the most fungible thing on earth. 1 gram equals every other gram. Melted, recast, melted again. Always the same. Two nations on a gold peg could trade without fear. Neither currency would betray them mid-deal. Easier trade is not always better trade. On the global scale, currency swings actually grease the wheels of commerce. But for the individual merchant, certainty is a blessing. No nasty surprises when the deal finally closes. Gold's second weapon was defense against financial repression. The quiet theft where savers earn less than inflation steals. Two roads lead to that trap: high inflation or low interest. Sound familiar yet? Repression is a silent wealth transfer. It quietly robs the saver and rewards the borrower. Picture your life savings earning 3%. Now watch the dollar lose half its value in 5 years. You lose. But your neighbor, fresh off a fat mortgage, celebrates. His debt just shrank by half in real terms. A mild version of this is no villain. The Fed deliberately targets gentle inflation to keep money moving, not hoarded. But too much inflation is poison, and gold blocks governments from using that poison on purpose. Here is the temptation. Governments carry debt too, and they hold the levers to inflate it away. It is an invisible tax on the responsible. The savers pay, and they never see the bill. Gold made it impossible. And now the headline benefit: price stability. Gold makes reckless money printing far harder to pull off. But that is only true in the very long run, and only if everything else holds equal. In economics, nothing ever does. Look at the Fed today. Its single mission is price stability, the very thing gold was supposed to do on autopilot. The Fed steers with interest rates, and in emergencies by buying and selling assets outright. In a fiat system, those levers move freely. The Fed does whatever it judges best. Does it always get it right? No, but it beats the alternative. Under gold, the central bank is shackled. Its every move is dictated by how much metal sits in the vault. Strike gold and export big and rates can fall. But let the mines run dry and imports surge, and rates must rise no matter the cost. And here is the cruel flaw. This can happen no matter how the rest of the economy is doing. Gold reserves may be precious, but against an entire economy, they are a rounding error, in fact setting the rates for everything. So rates were never set to stabilize prices. They were set to manage the metal. The tail wagging the dog. Economist Matthew O'Brien said it best with two charts: inflation during the gold standard, and inflation during quantitative easing. The gold standard helped turn a slump into the Great Depression. The bank had to guard the gold instead of saving the economy. After 2008, the Fed was finally free to fight. Things were grim, but never the abyss of the 1930s. So what about the runaway inflation of the 70s and 80s? Critics blame the fall of gold. Truth is messier. So where does gold go wrong? Start with the problem you can't fix. Gold doesn't fall evenly across the earth. China, America, Australia, Ghana, and Russia mine most of the world's gold. Everyone else is left begging at the door. A nation without gold has only two ways to get it. The first is the oldest method in history: pillage. The second way is mercantilist trade: export everything, import almost nothing, and hoard the gold that flows in. Better than war, maybe, but for a country like America, it would be a brutal shock, because the United States is running the largest trade deficits in its entire history. The gold would flow out, not in. Then there's the deeper problem, the price of gold itself. There simply isn't enough of it. To back every dollar in existence, the price of gold would have to explode far beyond anything markets have ever seen. And if America fixed gold below its true value, the arbitrageurs would smell blood instantly. Trade dollars for cheap American gold. Ship it abroad. Sell it for euros. Buy back more dollars than you started with. That loop wouldn't take years to break the system. It would take weeks. The realistic answer is a fractional reserve gold standard. Keep only a sliver of gold on hand to honor the dollars. But even then, gold's price still has to soar. And what did you really gain? You traded trusting fiat money for trusting the central bank to never face a run on its gold. You swapped one faith for another. Gold has another flaw, and this one strikes at the heart of growth. As an economy expands, its money supply must expand with it. A bigger economy makes more goods and services. It needs more money to buy them all. Chain the money supply to gold in a vault, and you're left with one of two ugly outcomes. The first is deflation. When prices fall, and an economy can quietly grind to a halt. The second is even simpler. A starved money supply can choke economic growth outright. Without enough liquidity flowing, there's no fuel for real expansion. The engine simply stalls. Now here's the myth people cling. We remember the post-war years as America's golden age, and yes, we were on the gold standard. But look at the data. From 1951 to 1971, the economy roughly tripled, from $336 billion to just over $1.1 trillion. Then came the years after gold. From 1971 to 1991, the economy didn't triple. It grew nearly sixfold, to $6.1 trillion. And that happened despite the 1970s and 80s being far rougher economically. It happened despite America losing its one freak advantage, being the only industrial giant not bombed to rubble in World War II. Were there other forces behind that boom? Of course, but many of them were impossible under gold: unrestricted free trade, freewheeling monetary policy, and yes, even the inflation that pushes people to spend instead of hoard. All of it would have been off the table with a vault of gold setting the limits. And now we arrive at the biggest problem of all. The gold standard doesn't even do what people believe it does. People love the idea that their money is backed by something real, unlike today's dollar, backed only by belief. But ask the dangerous question: what actually gives gold its value? A few narrow industrial uses, a pretty shine, and beyond that, almost nothing but belief. Strip away the faith, and gold gold is just a soft, off-colored, dense metal sitting in a box. Here's the truest way to think about it. Running an economy on gold is like riding a bike with training wheels. Sure, training wheels can stop you from doing something outrageously dumb, but you will never see anyone ride the Tour de France with training wheels bolted on, and you will never see a modern, advanced global economy conduct its business backed by gold. Gold, like training wheels, can't protect you from everything either. Neither is any substitute for being able to actually steer the bike, or to steer the economy. And if you can steer properly, those safety measures do little but slow you down. So was abandoning gold a mistake? The evidence says the chains came off and the economy ran faster without them. Gold gave us comfort, but comfort and control were never the same thing, and an economy survives on control. So here we stand in 2026, inflation gnawing at every paycheck, and the old question rises from the grave once more. Was killing the gold standard the original sin? The romantics tell you metal is honest and paper is a lie, but honesty, it turns out, is more complicated than the weight in a vault. Remember the great irony? Working around the gold standard is what turned a recession into the Great Depression. The central bank could not save the economy because it was too busy guarding the gold. The cure was chained to the disease. Then came 2008, the modern test. Untethered from gold, the Fed flooded the system and the depression never came. Two charts, two crises, one verdict. The unchained currency bent so the economy would not break. But what about the runaway inflation of the 70s, the decade gold's defenders loved to wave? Look closer, and gold takes no blame. Oil shocks, war debt, and cheap money lit that fire. The economists agree. Leaving gold did not cause it. And here is gold's dirty secret. The metal is buried in only a handful of nations, scattered by pure geological luck. To live on gold, the gold poor must claw it through war or relentless trade surplus. A recipe for conflict, not stability. And the math simply does not close. There is not nearly enough gold on Earth to back every dollar at today's prices. Force a fixed price and the arbitrageurs feast. They drain your gold, ship it abroad, and the system unravels in weeks. A growing economy needs growing money. Chain the supply to metal in a vault, and choke the very growth you wanted. We worship the post-war boom as gold's golden age. Yet the data tells a stranger story. On gold, the economy tripled in 20 years. Off gold, it grew sixfold. The training wheels were holding it back, and the deepest truth of all. Gold's value is also just belief, a shared faith in a soft, dense, off-colored metal. Strip away the faith and you are left with a pretty rock. The paper and the metal stand on the very same foundation. Picture the gold standard as training wheels on a bicycle. They stop the dumbest crashes, sure, but no one rides the Tour de France with training wheels bolted on. And no modern economy conquers the world dragging gold behind it. The wheels cannot steer for you. They only slow you down once you have learned to balance. Nixon's choice in 1971 was not the end of American greatness. It was the moment the bike learned to ride free. Gold makes trade simple and tames the worst abuses of inflation. Those are real virtues, not myths. But it cannot deliver the price stability its champions promise. Too often it delivers the opposite at the worst possible moment. So the real question was never gold versus paper. It was whether we trust ourselves to steer. And that in the end is the only choice that matters.